Welcome, everyone. I think we're going to get started straight away because we have so much to get through today. People are still coming in, and this is a webinar format, so you're all on mute. If we do have time towards the end, we might take a couple of voice contributions in the Q&A. But for now, just to answer those questions that are coming in the chat, we're all on mute apart from the one person that's speaking at the time. So welcome, everyone. I'm Ognegwecki from the Social Mobility Commission, and I'm so delighted that you're here and you have chosen to spend your lunch break with us today. So please use this time actually to get your nutrients in your caffeine and whatever you need. I've got some tea here, and we will hopefully provide you with a little bit of nourishment for the mind. And as I'm welcoming everyone in, people are still joining. I would love to hear in the chat function at the bottom of your screen, where you're calling in from. So perhaps you could say a quick hello and just a place where you're taking this call from, so we can get a sense of where all of our bodies are located across the country. Welcome. We have people from Nottingham, Aylesbury. Oh, somebody from the US actually. Yorkshire. Oh, gosh, it's going so fast. Manchester, London, Surrey, Leicestershire, Bristol. Beautiful. Oh, thank you. Keep it coming. This is really nice to know where you're all at. A couple of things I want to say around accessibility. So there is closed captions are available for this event. So if you want to access them, you can open the live transcript box at the bottom right of your Zoom screen. And you can select view transcript in that option, and the writing will appear at the bottom of your screen, a bit like subtitles. Later, when we get into a panel conversation, you'll have more people speaking. So if you'd like to see who is speaking, you can also click on view full transcript, and that will open up a new box on the side of the screen, a bit like a chat, and then you can see who's saying what. You can download we're going to use just a few slides for this session, but if you want to download them and look at them perhaps a little bit more close up or in your own time, I think the link to that should be in the chat. And this event is being recorded, so we'll upload it onto our YouTube channel, and you can watch it again or share it with your friends and colleagues. I'm also joined by my colleagues Rachel and Edward from the Social Mobility Commission, and they will pop up in the chat throughout the session, so you'll meet them there. Great. So we have so much to share with you today. And before we dive into all of that, I would love to just take a moment to connect you all to the topic of this launch event. And here, again, in the chat, if you'd like to share a moment in your work that really connected you to the belief and importance of apprenticeships and what they can achieve, whether that is for a person's life trajectory, for an organization, for society as a whole. Perhaps it's a little memory from your work. Maybe you haven't worked in apprenticeships, but you've been an apprentice, or you've heard somebody else talk about them. Let us know one thing in the chat that has really connected you to be doing this work, to be interested in using apprenticeships to change a whole world. We'll get into all of that. So we'd love to hear about that in the chat. Because, and the reason I'm asking this question is because as we have developed this toolkit, one of the things that really struck me in having all these conversations with people is that everyone we talked to had a story about why they really cared about apprenticeships and really believed in their potential to create change. And so I'd love to start with that. So yeah, some people are saying the enthusiasm that young apprentices bring to their work, creating opportunity, started working life as an apprentice back in the 80s. Goodness, wow, that's incredible. Great start and transformational for me. Thank you for sharing that. Potential to diversify workplaces through apprenticeships. Stuff about young people, and also older people who have gone on a long trajectory from being apprentices opportunities for all, learning accessible to all, no longer need a degree for fabulous job in creative industries. This is amazing stuff. Keep it coming. I won't be able to read it all out, but also have a look at what other people are saying. And I will share with you a little bit of an intro around this toolkit and some of the things that it will offer to you. We've created it just to remind you, so the purpose is to really support people wherever they are, whatever industry, place, business size, wherever they are in working on this apprenticeship system. We want to help them make apprenticeship programs accessible and inclusive for people from all backgrounds. And I will give you 3 really brief kind of snippets from the toolkit. I encourage you all to download it. I believe the link to that is in the chat as well, and look at it in your own time. So Rachel, could you perhaps bring up slide 2 from the deck? And as I'm doing that, I'm just going to look at all your beautiful contributions in the chat. Wow, thank you so much. I'm going to read out a couple more as we are waiting for the slides. My apprenticeship helped me help other apprentices in networks. Oh, that is incredible. Yeah, and they're really such an important aspect of creating really transformational apprenticeships, is that connection with other people who have been on the same journey, and we'll hear much more about that. Okay, so I probably don't need to convince you that apprenticeships are one of the best mechanisms that we have available to build diverse, skilled, committed teams from the ground up. And it is a brilliant tool for social mobility. This quote is from an organization that shared their story with us in the toolkit. You can read more about it. And I think the reason I put this here is because it illustrates something really important, which is that hiring apprentices from more disadvantaged backgrounds isn't just about getting people through the door. It's really about changing how you think about the future of your workforce, what so-called talent looks like, what your own culture looks like in the organization. And I love how that is illustrated in this statement. And this is something we've heard time and again as we've had conversations with people in creating this toolkit. And so I know this is something that's really high up on a lot of people's agendas, not least because COVID-19 has exposed so many inequities in our society, and people are really committed to rebuilding some of the things that it has exposed and some of the economic setback that we've experienced. And that brings me to the next slide, Rachel, and one of the more perhaps difficult truths around apprenticeships and social mobility that we have found in producing this toolkit and the research that we've done before, which is that apprenticeships need to do a lot more to really meet this potential that they have for social mobility. So just 3 things from our research, and there's more about that in the toolkit. We've looked at apprenticeships since roughly around 2015, and we've found that since the apprenticeship levy was introduced in 2017, it has actually funded more higher level apprenticeships that were more likely to be taken up by people from more privileged backgrounds over people from working class backgrounds. And we found that there is a disadvantage gaps between people from different socioeconomic backgrounds at every stage of the apprenticeship journey. So that means from who is even aware that apprenticeships exist as an option, who is applying, who is getting in, who is having what kind of quality of training, and who's being offered progression opportunities, salaries, etc. And the pandemic has really made this worse. So there is so much opportunity for change here and so much work to do. And I assume you're all here because you're committed to that and you realize that and you want to do something about it. And that brings me to the next slide, please, Rachel, which is that so many of you, whether it's employers, training providers, people who work in a charitable capacity to support people who are doing apprenticeships, people who work on the policy side, so many of you have asked us as a Social Mobility Commission to produce something that specifically looks at apprenticeship, and that is more than just a report, that is really practical and can support you in your work. And so this is our answer, and the toolkit that is now, as of this morning, available on our website. And it's a roadmap. Apprenticeships are complex. Everyone's context is different. There isn't a silver bullet. There isn't a linear process, but it is a toolbox with lots and lots of examples of tips, of stories from others who have done work in this space, to help you in your journey as you develop your work further. And it's the product of months of collaboration, conversations, feedback, input from people who work across the apprenticeship space. And so I really hope there's something in it for all of you. And to launch this toolkit, it's in that spirit that we are kind of perhaps staging a conversation between people who occupy really different roles in the apprenticeship system. So people who are employers, people who are training providers, people who support an apprentice network, people who've been apprentices, people who support everyone else doing this work, to really get together and think about how can everyone's efforts be aligned to make a really huge difference in this space and make apprenticeship genuinely inclusive from the inside out. And we realized just how necessary and powerful it is to bring people together in this way. And so we hope that by listening in today, you'll be inspired to have some of these conversations in your own context. And we're just really excited to share this with you, and we're so glad that you're here. So we will spend the rest of the hour with our incredible panel. So perhaps, Rachel, you can remove the slides now, thank you, and then we can hear from them in a moment. We are going to close the chat for this bit because it can be a bit distractive, but the Q&A is open. So if you have questions, please put them in there. Rachel and Edward will be responding if there are questions that we can kind of answer right away. We will field some questions to the panel towards the end, and I already know that we won't get to all of them because there's about 200 people on this call. But what we have committed to is getting back to everyone who's posted a question in the chat with their name. So if it's anonymous, unfortunately, we can't get back to you because you won't have your email address. But if you do post with your name and we can't get to it in the session, we will do that after. And yeah, I think that is all I needed to do in this intro bit. So that only leaves me to introduce you to our wonderful chair of the panel, Jessica Ognegwecki, who is director at the Association of Apprentices and one of our unparalleled social mobility commissioners. Jess brings to this conversation both her experience of completing a production apprenticeship at the BBC, as well as her work with countless organizations, networks, lots of young people trying to make apprenticeships more widely known and more accessible to people from all backgrounds. I'm so thrilled that you're here with us, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Julia, for the introduction, and thanks everyone for being here today. I'm so elated of the turnout. Today we are joined by 5 amazing panelists who all have a wealth of experience when it comes to the world of apprenticeships. And though you may already recognise these lovely faces, I thought it would be great if we begin with the panelists introducing themselves and what they do. So let's start with Cassandra. Cassandra, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to join us today?
Sure, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Cassandra Flavius, and I am a civil servant, and I'm really pleased to be on this call. So I'm an apprenticeship ambassador, and the reason I am is why I'm involved in this. So I think I'm a really good lived example of social mobility, as in I was unemployed, I had a daughter quite young, I was homeless prior to that, had no idea what I wanted to do, and basically stumbled on to an apprenticeship, which I will explain a little bit later on. But and that was following family members saying to me, you'll never amount to anything, you're too nice, you won't get anywhere in life. And that's quite disheartening. And I'm really pleased that I took the chance, because at the time I had no idea what an apprenticeship was, coming from being a young parent. And I've managed I started it in the Department for Education, I've moved on to the Department for International Development, I've done some work with HMRC and Cabinet Office, and I'm currently in the Ministry of Defence, transitioning over to the Department for Work and Pension. So I'm interested in basically encouraging more people to take the chance with apprenticeships, and also for employers and providers and organizations to just try and reach out, have a bit more apprenticeship programs where they can, and to target both young and older people, because I came in a bit older, I think I was 28, 29, but mainly from disadvantaged, especially from disadvantaged and diverse backgrounds, because it literally can change your life, and it really has changed mine. So that's why I'm here today. So thank you so much for having me with the great panelists that we have today.
Thank you so much, Cassandra. I'll completely relate. Apprenticeships have really changed my life completely as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. Next up, we have Alex. Could you please introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to be here. I'm Alex Miles. I'm the Managing Director of Yorkshire Learning Providers and a Director of the Northern Skills Network. I support a regional network of apprenticeship providers, colleges and universities, and I'm really passionate about and dedicated to ensuring that our members and the wider FE sector has a truly inclusive curriculum offer that does engage those from the most disadvantaged backgrounds and communities. And I'm particularly passionate about this as I work across the north, and really ensuring that those regional inequalities and the north-south divide, sorts itself out and actually tries to have some positive change. I think I would class myself as a positive disruptor, coming in and making sure that social mobility, levelling up, inclusive learning environments are a priority, not just for me as a regional network, but every single one of the training providers and employers critically that we support. I'm also an apprenticeship ambassador and work with a range of employers to, again, really make sure that they understand what it's like to deliver apprenticeships and the difference they make when they don't necessarily, if they pick or recruit from outside of the norm. So really working with employers as well, and working with schools and making sure that schools really understand the benefits and the importance of apprenticeships and what they can do for people, breaking down some of those myths and barriers. And I actually like to spend time with the parents and the teachers over the young people, because young people get apprenticeships, see that future horizon gazing. It's the teachers and parents we need to do a little bit more work with. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm passionate about this toolkit, which is a fantastic toolkit, and I think will be valuable to every employer and every training provider as part of their inclusion journey.
Thank you so much, Alex. We're so inspired by all the work you do, and I'm so happy you're joining us today. Kasim, you're up next. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us why you're here today?
Hi everyone, my name's Kasim. I run a few different organisations, man of many hats. You can see some of them behind me. So my main job is running the BAME Apprentice Network, and the whole purpose of the BAME Apprentice Network is to create role models, BAME apprentices, and so other people can see that they can also do an apprenticeship, and it's a viable opportunity to get into employment. I think, with a lot of BAME communities, getting a degree seems to be the only way into employment. But actually, with the degree apprentice network, something else that we run, you can still get a degree through an apprenticeship. And actually, when it comes to social mobility, and we look at the barriers that young people from BAME backgrounds or socially deprived economic backgrounds, the challenges that they have to access education, and especially higher education and further education, apprenticeships really do work for them. And the whole purpose of our organisation, and the reason I'm on this call today, is to highlight just the importance of apprenticeships and what employers, learning providers, and everyone within this apprenticeship community can do to help support social mobility and apprenticeships.
Thank you so much, Kasim. I'm really looking forward to hearing about more of the work you do later on in our questions. And next up, we have Anna.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks so much for inviting me along this afternoon to be part of the panel. So my name is Anna Morrison, and I'm the founder and director of Amazing Apprenticeships. So our organisation works with the entire ecosystem of apprenticeships, I would say. So apprentices, employers, training providers, but also we do a huge amount of work with schools and colleges, engaging teachers, careers advisors, students and their families, so parents and carers, to help them to understand really and have confidence in the apprenticeship system. We also spend a huge amount of time with policymakers, so colleagues at the Department for Education across all sorts of different channels, just trying to really make sure that that policy into practice piece is working. We're really passionate about widening access to apprenticeships. We have seen firsthand the magic that happens when you get that connection between the employer, the training provider, and that young person or individual, right, you know, and making sure that all of those different component parts come together to offer the individual a really quality experience that will support them in their future careers. So like others on the call, really proud to have been part of the toolkit and the creation of the toolkit. And it's just so brilliant to see something that is so practical that, like Alex said, any organisation is going to be able to pick up and find something really inspirational in there. So thanks for having me along.
Thank you so much. And thanks for all your help and inputting on the toolkit as well. And last but not least, we have Stephen.
Thank you, Jess. I'm being slightly distracted. I'm working from home today and the house down my road is on fire with the fire engine outside. So if I disappear, I understand, but it's slightly scary. But anyway, so I am the Chief Executive of Aldermore Bank and I chair Experian in the UK. I'm also the interim co-chair of the Social Mobility Commission, which has been fantastic for the past nearly 3 years now. I'm interested in this for two reasons. One is I left school at 16, joined Barclays as the postboy, and sort of I left there a few years ago, having been chief executive of retail banking and then Barclaycard. And it wasn't really an apprenticeship scheme, but people there and then ultimately the organisation took chances with me and gave me opportunity, and I grabbed those and I progressed, and I did go to an FE college in the evening, and they paid for it and so forth. So I personally benefit from a quasi apprenticeship scheme. The second thing is when I was at Barclays and running retail banking, I was in areas such as Cardiff, which at the time had high unemployment, and yet I couldn't find people to do jobs in call centres and operations centres. And I realised we were putting artificial barriers in place, such as we need X number of GCSEs. Nobody needs a GCSE to answer a phone. What I need is people who want to speak to customers, who want to help and want to work. And we created an apprenticeship scheme that did that. We reached out to areas and people who are maybe harder to find. And I saw real people come in who had little aspiration, large because they didn't see aspiration or opportunity around them. And we put our arms around them, we put support in place, and these turned into real jobs, real wages, real prospects, real career development. And by the time I left, over 2,000 people had joined, which made my life a lot easier. It gave people real opportunities. Some of those are moving on to managerial and leadership positions. So I learned that apprenticeships are not a nice to do, they are, but they are a real must do. If you're an organisation who wants people, the best people, don't close yourselves down to the widest possible talent pool, but equally you have to make it happen. And it's not just getting people in, it's getting people up. And I think the toolkit just showcases some really great tips and hints and case studies of how to make that work.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And I love what you said about, you know, the sort of barriers we put in place that we don't necessarily need, that we can easily, you know, get rid of to ensure more people have access to these sort of spaces. So
and just one thing I would say, just at Aldermore, just to bring this to life, and I'm conscious many people here from the north, we've just taken on our first Kickstart apprentice in the Manchester area. This person lives on a sofa in people's houses. I mean, how they manage it, I don't know, but I hope that we give them a stable footing and we get maybe a different perspective on life from someone that's having a tougher time than us.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and thank you so much for all of the panelists for joining us today. So I think we should just get stuck right into the questions. So Cassandra, let's start by talking about the perception of apprenticeship. So the Youth Voice Consensus published in September reported that 85% of students are now hearing about apprenticeships in schools, but there is only 29% of them wanting to do one. In your experience, where do you think that disconnect actually comes from?
Thanks. So I was impressed to hear the high number that actually hear about it now, but disappointed with such a low number. So I think there might be several disconnects. So I would say I probably left school, 20 odd years ago. And that was probably when they were pushing BTECs more at the time. So apprenticeships weren't a thing. But at the same time, I remember when my daughter, who's now doing a master's, probably about 2016 or so, even going to her school then, you really didn't hear much about apprenticeships. They weren't pushing them as much as they were pushing, A-levels and other I would call them normally praised qualifications. So I think the schools need to be thinking about it and speaking about it more on a level term. It's not like if you're not good at this, and if you're not, because some people may just not want to do university. We all learn differently, and we might have different times in life where actually that might work better. You might want to work and train. So I think the schools need to do a bit better. And then when another one, I think, is organizations and maybe providers. I heard about mine through the job center at the time, and I'm aware we've closed a lot of them down recently. But I think even to that standard, I wasn't even told it was an apprenticeship. I was said, I was looking for a job and I was told, there's this admin thing, go to that open day. And I was like, what kind of admin thing? And they were like, I don't know, some government admin thing, you're looking for admin post. And to be honest, I'm quite pleased that I did think, it was that inquisitiveness that thought, let me go. And then it turned out to be an apprenticeship, which again, when I turned up there, hadn't been out of work and education for so long, bringing up my daughter, I had no idea what that was, because that all transpired while I was obviously at home and trying to do evening things. So I think it's that better understanding, so they can pitch it properly and they can explain to people what it is, where it could get you, the possibilities and the flexibility behind it. I also think for the providers as well, and I think Stephen touched on it amazingly well, I think it's the access for socioeconomic background people. It's like getting rid of those barriers and finding the root causes. So just working a bit more to actually figure out how you can open up the opportunities a bit more for apprentices. I think that's a massive thing, and the support. I found in mine, because as I said, I did mine at the Department of Education, the support while you're there. So not just from your line manager, but if you're lucky enough, if you're a bigger company, maybe you have cohorts from before, is that peer-to-peer support, and making sure the whole department understands what the apprenticeship is, or the whole organization understand what it is, so that they can balance the learning as well as doing the work, and talking about progression with them, because I think, even though I did mine probably about 3 or 4 cohorts in, that conversation still wasn't there properly. It's only because a few line managers actually thought, what are we going to do with our apprentice when they get to the end? So talking about that early, I think, is really key, and building some kind of stability and collaborative working, because from what I've seen, there's loads of organizations, like some of the panelists that we have on today, loads doing a lot of things, and it's that learning, and I think the toolkit will be great for that as well. So I think it's just making sure that collaborative working is there. And just, I think it's, for me, I kid you not, I have had tears run out of my eyes when I realized how much my apprenticeship has changed my life. As I mentioned about having my daughter earlier and what people had said to me, my confidence was really, really low at the time. And I've managed to, basically, how I look at it, kind of come from nothing, even in this house that I sit in, which was what the first thing I got that had nothing on the walls or on the floor when I moved in with my daughter was 2 weeks old, from being homeless. And I've managed to work in ministerial offices. I've managed to work with senior civil servants. I've done national traveling with like Department of Education. I've done regional traveling. I've been to Bangladesh and Rwanda. I've worked for just under 2 years in Afghanistan up to 2017. I've worked with military colleagues, just like things that, if you asked me 11 years ago, Cassandra, where do you think you'd be? I would have never envisaged it. And if it wasn't for the apprenticeship, there's no way I think I would have done it. So it's for people to just know that it could just open so much doors for you. So it's not just an 18 or 24 months thing. It literally can change your life, and it is for everyone. I know some people say it might not be for everyone. It is for everyone. If you want to do it, give it a go. Literally, like, the worst that could happen, and I think I said this to Julia, the worst that can happen is basically what you've learned something new. Like, that is literally the worst thing that can happen. I promote it everywhere I go, in country, out of country. I just keep talking about it because it really can change your life. And I'm just so pleased that so many people have joined and want to engage with this. I think your toolkit will be brilliant. So that's my so we can do more work on it. But yeah.
Thank you so much, Cassandra, for sharing your personal stories as well. And I think we can all relate to, you know, all of us talking each other's ears off about apprenticeships. I think something that the panel has in common is that we can talk about it all day long because we're all so passionate about it. So thank you so much for sharing. Alex, as a regional network in the North, WYLP has been looking at targeting apprenticeship efforts towards social mobility cold spots, areas with particularly few opportunities. What role can learning providers play in tackling geographical inequalities and in the levelling up agenda?
Yes, thanks. I think, I mean, I said it in my intro, I think we all need to be a bit more accountable, particularly in the North, where we do have such different inequalities and there is such a drastic need. As a regional network, I'm really encouraging my members and our apprenticeship providers to work collaboratively and to look at differentiation in terms of their recruitment and their response. Cassandra spoke about having that those barriers. Some of those barriers are imposed on us as a sector from government. What we need to do is find, through collaboration and innovation, ways of accessing you know, different communities, different approaches to marketing, to promotion, to engagement. Listening to stories like Cassandra's, what I don't think our sector does enough of is shout how great we are. We're always focused, probably because of Ofsted, we're always focused on what we need to do to improve and not what we do so fantastically. And I think we need to be accountable to make sure that we are engaging with communities, that we do have a differentiated approach and understanding what the needs are from those with the most disadvantaged backgrounds and communities. Understanding the barriers, understanding why we have hereditary worklessness in lots of our communities across Yorkshire and the North, and really working up. My mantra is very much collaboration, innovation, celebration. As a sector, we need to do more of that. As individual entities in the training provider space, we need to do more of that. And we all need to have a collective response and a collective responsibility to making sure that we have truly inclusive learning environments. A provider cannot say that they are inclusive and they've got great equality and diversity if they are cherry picking their learners, if they're working with employers that will only pick certain types of people that don't have additional learning support or needs, or even just a differentiated approach to teaching and learning. As Anna said, we need to engage with schools and have conversations. But we're really trying to target, we've been doing some analysis across Yorkshire to identify where those social mobility cold spots are, getting groups and clusters of training providers together to say we need to address you know, engagement in these areas, and understanding that we can't all do it singular. This is not a singular response. Inclusion is not a singular response. It's a collaborative response. And actually working with those from the most disadvantaged backgrounds, it needs to be a collaborative response. One provider can't do all those things that need to engage and bring people back in. As I said, I prefer to spend time with teachers and parents because we've got more myth busting to do there. I think young people get apprenticeships more. I think they're more able to see the earning potentials. And like Cassandra said, it's a lifelong benefit. It's not a 24-month or a 12-month benefit. It's a lifelong benefit. We need to do more work with parents and teachers. I've still got schools that say, I've got a cohort of kids that we can let you talk to apprenticeships about. And it's the kids they don't know what to do with. They don't want to keep them on. They don't know what to do. Apprenticeships are not programs for the low skilled, for the under-educated. They are programs for everyone, and everyone should have the opportunity to hear about apprenticeships. I also think there's more work we need to do around wages and apprenticeship wages. And particularly for adults, the wages do not allow to be able to live. It's not sustainable for adults. We need employers to pledge to pay decent wages. We need employers to be committed to the quality of apprenticeships. And we are having young people and adults that are choosing to work in Amazon and Aldi, not that there's anything wrong, I'm not shaming, but over learning a trade. And that's not just construction trades, that's teaching assistants, nursery nurses, accountants, HR, finance, police. They would rather, you know, work where they can get more money than actually learn a trade that's going to be really beneficial to them. So I just think that we need to collaborate, innovate and celebrate. We need to really understand where our cold spots are and do some analysis of those that need the most work, and then put an action plan in, and ultimately be accountable to offering a truly inclusive learning environment.
Thank you so much, Alex. I love especially what you said about, that emphasis on making sure those young people in those hard to reach areas, do get those opportunities. I had to move from Norwich to London to do my apprenticeship because there was nothing available for me. So I really personally relate to that. Thank you so much. Kasim, the BAME Apprentice Network engages over 300 apprentices each year, and you also run Pathway to Grow, which is a networking platform for SMEs. What can you tell us about the experience of apprentices in small organisations and the role a network like yours can play in supporting them?
Thanks so much, Jess. I just want to say thank you to everyone on here. Stephen, it was great to hear about, your progression from the bank and, to go up. And I just wanted to touch on a couple of points that Alex made and Cassandra made. Schools still don't do enough to promote apprenticeships. They do not understand apprenticeships. No matter how much we bang the drum, schools just don't get it. And my theory behind the reasoning for that is every teacher has been to university. That is all they know. How are they then going to converse with children and tell them that actually don't do what I did, go and do an apprenticeship? And I remember sort of my own journey, and, Cassandra's mentioned, 20 years ago, the promotion of BTECs. I remember apprenticeships were being promoted, but because I was perceived as that troublesome child at school, I was sent over to go to an open day at KPMG and learn about apprenticeships. And I thought, wow, this is a fantastic opportunity. But because it was seen as the thing for the troubled child who couldn't do, a degree, it was perceived negatively. So when I went home and said to my parents, within 5 years, I could be ACA trained, I could be a chartered accountant, I could be on 40 grand within 5 years, no debt, and be earning money at the same time. They couldn't fathom that. It just, where was the catch? What's the catch in this whole thing? Why is someone going to pay for your education? And that was really, really difficult. So I ended up, going to university, doing a degree that I hated. But I'm in a career that I love right now. So, that's by the by. So I think there's a couple of issues we need to really focus on. And, Stephen's journey, that progression needs to be there. It needs to be there for everyone. I think that's what we really need to think about. The levy needs to be there for social mobility. It's not to pay for MBAs of senior directors. It needs to be there to help those young people from disadvantaged backgrounds to get into sustainable careers. As Cassandra said, when she moved into her apartment, she had nothing. And that's what apprenticeships need to be there. They need to be there to help people to get them up the ladder and into the work, because we've all got skill sets, and we've got to identify, and this word hard to reach, again, this is something that I really dislike, because I don't feel anyone's hard to reach. We're just not reaching them in the way that we should be. And I think there's a lot of organizations out there like our network. There's so many employability organizations out there that employers need to go and do their homework, do the legwork, stop being lazy. And this is, I'm a bit controversial here today, because I've spent the whole week talking on Black History Month conversations, and time again, I hear from employers, we don't know how to engage. Well, there's plenty of organizations like myself, like Alex, like Cassandra, like Anna, we're here to help you. So come and speak, have the conversation with us, but be willing to pay for that advice as well. And this is another thing that I find, the advice is there, the services are there. Anna runs a fantastic program, the Genie Program. If you don't know what you're doing and you need that support, as employers, that support is there. It's readily available for you. So I think we need to move away from a lot of excuses that, we can't do certain things because we just don't know. And we need to move away from that language and be forward thinking. So just coming back to your point, SMEs struggle because they haven't got the infrastructure to support an apprentice. And actually, having learning provider networks around the country that can sort of engage with those smaller employers and give them that support is really, really key and important. And it's actually the SMEs that are recruiting from those diverse backgrounds, which is actually helping social mobility, because to get into a large organization in an apprenticeship, it is very, very competitive. It is just as competitive as getting into a top university. So, you know, some closing points from me. If you're struggling with this issue of social mobility, if you need that support, you know, there's people on this call that can help you. Reach out for that support, and, you know, let's all support each other, because this is not, you know, not one person can make a difference. We've all got to come together, and I'm so happy and so honored actually to be surrounded by such amazing people that are doing so many things to support social mobility, especially in apprenticeships. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I agree. I feel very inspired to be with you all today. And I think what you said about it's a collaborative effort actually really goes nicely to the next question to Anna, which is, you know, the apprenticeship system is so complex, and aligning efforts between employers and training providers and schools seems really important to create an inclusive program. Can you tell us about places where you've seen it work really well and the difference that made?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Jess. Yeah, just to pick up on one of Kasim's points around schools and colleges, and you know, that more needs to happen. And look, I'm from a family of teachers. I work with we through our organisation work with around 4,500 schools and colleges across the country. There are an army of people out there in schools who are really trying their best to change this conversation and to shift the dial. They are doing fantastic work, but it's not consistent. And I think this is the really frustrating thing. No two schools, if you look at what they're doing in terms of their apprenticeship information or kind of wider technical education, you know, the conversations aren't the same. I still work with schools where there's a real fixation on degree apprenticeships being the holy grail almost, you know, and, you know, will you come in and talk to our students about apprenticeships, but can we just talk about the higher and degree ones, because our, you know, our students are kind of going for that level. And I think that for me is the bit that's got to change. Like Cassandra, really, you know, delighted to see that so many young people in secondary schools are recognising that they are now having apprenticeships discussed with them, but so worrying that that percentage drops off so significantly when you ask them if they actually would be likely to apply or not. We're getting it wrong, aren't we, in terms of that inspiration and motivation and really empowering the young people, but also the teachers and careers advisors around them and their parents and carers to really see the true value of apprenticeships and the opportunities that it can give. I think, you know, the different parts of the ecosystem, that sounds like a grand word, doesn't it? But it's basically, if you look at the employer, the training provider, the individual as well within the apprenticeship, you know, Alex picked up on it. Training providers have rules that kind of, they do prohibit some progress in this area. You know, we have a lot of rules that training providers have got to work within, and they've also got to run their businesses or their training provider organizations, you know, so you've got to try and balance that with also saying, but this is the minimum. I'm an SME. We've grown from kind of me working in, well, I'm still in my kitchen, but at the moment, but, you know, working in a small organization. And there's now 14 of us. We've got 2 Kickstarters. We've got apprentices. As a small business, I make that investment and I recognize what that investment does for our organization. The standards, the rules, all of those things are just there as a minimum. We absolutely still have the opportunity to go, do you know what? That is the starting point. That's the baseline expectation, but I want my program to be better. And I think also being a bit of an insider, as in kind of knowing the rules. If a training provider says to me, well, really, you know, you would need English and maths to be able to do that apprenticeship, I'm informed enough as an employer to go, no, I don't. What I'm going to do is recruit for talent. I'm going to recruit for potential. I want to find that person that I can give an opportunity to, like someone did for me all those years ago. And similar to Stephen, you know, my first proper job was working as a receptionist in an FE college. And that's how I got drawn into this crazy world of apprenticeships 23 years ago. So It does work, but you've kind of got to just empower people, I think, to feel confident in what the rules are, what can be, what can be changed, and how we can all come together to make it more effective. And Kasim kindly gave us a shout out for the Genie Program, which is a program where we're working with employers to really get underneath the skin of social mobility. What does it mean to have a truly inclusive apprenticeship program? And we're working with some incredible employers who are trying to navigate some of these really sensitive topics and issues to make sure that they get it right. And they're getting really informed, they're sharing best practice, it's fantastic. But also kind of wider in the sector, every month we put on a free webinar, and yesterday was on taking positive action. And we had some legal experts in who were talking to us about, if you do want to use apprenticeships to change the diversity of your workforce, this is how you can do it. So we just need to get informed, don't we? So rather than going, oh, we wouldn't be able to do that, let's, like Kasim said, reach out to the experts in the sector, try and collaborate more, share our expertise, work out what works, and be brave enough to take that first step forward as well. So yeah, thank you, Jess.
Thank you so much, Anna. I always find you inspiring when you speak. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And Stephen, collecting data on socioeconomic background is really important so you can make informed changes to a process. For example, if you see that lots of people from working class backgrounds apply, but there's a big drop off in who actually gets offered an apprenticeship. But this is a very sensitive topic. So could you please talk a little bit about how employers and training providers can ask someone about their background without it singling them out or making them feel judged?
Yes, good question, Jess. So socioeconomic background is not a protected characteristic, or at least not yet. There are pros and cons actually in it becoming so. But at the very least, we want companies, organizations, institutions to think about that and understand where their starting point is, how they are progressing, and whether what they do in whatever industry they're doing or public sector they're in benefits the broader community. Hard to do that if you don't have a data or start point. So how would you get that data? Pretty easy to answer a question whether you're a male or female, although maybe not as easy, but it's very difficult to ask the question in a way that people understand. So if you say to someone, what is your socioeconomic background? I mean, I'm not sure I would be able to understand that. If you sort of bring it to life to people around, as in, what was the occupation of your parent? Which in my mum's case was a cleaner. That's easier to answer, but actually they can be quite difficult to answer if you feel, well, do I want to say that? Am I embarrassed about that? Some people are, some people aren't. What are you going to do with that? What's the purpose of it? So organizations really need to start with getting the data. I would urge organizations to do that anyway, because I suspect at some point in time, they'll be requested to report out on that, like they are with things like gender pay gap and so forth. And then the question is, how do you ask that question? And we've learned through experience on the commission and working this through with the toolkit, that actually there were 4 or 5 questions. We've now been able to boil that down to 1, which is basically asking the person what in your household of the highest earner, what was their occupation when you were about the age of 14. Most people are able to answer that. You do need to explain what you're going to do, treat it confidentially. This is why we're asking you. So give some context. But if you ask that one single question, we've seen so far embryonic, but the response rate tends to be north of 80%. When questions are asked in a more complicated way, that response rate tends to be about 20%. So it's a big shift. It's all in the toolkit. Make sure you look there. But importantly, get the data. If you don't have the data, you don't know where you are, you don't know where you can get to, and you don't know what gets in the way.
Thank you so much. And that is it for the questions that I asked. We're now going to move on to the Q&A. So the first question I have here is, what does the panel think, in their opinion, is the best way to improve the perception of apprenticeships in society?
Could I jump in here? I think what we need to do, and I said it in my answer, we need to do more to showcase the benefits and the potential, and as Cassandra said, the lifelong potential. I also think the department needs to take some responsibility. Their marketing and engagement is very focused on big business, and local small businesses don't see themselves in the marketing and the promotion that goes out on a national level. So we need case studies, we need success stories, we need to change the narrative that says that apprenticeships are low skilled or low quality or whatever that might be. And we can only do that by sharing where it works fantastically. But actually, as Kasim said, SMEs are the people that are recruiting. SMEs are the people that are recruiting people from social mobility cold spots, but they can't see themselves and they're not reflected in what's going out publicly from the department, from the government. And we all, I think, need to share more. We need to have better case studies that are really localised at the grassroots of our communities. Not only will that help showcase and reflect employers, it will be able to showcase what young people, types of jobs we can go in, and it also should help some of the regional inequalities. We also need to be better, and I think Cassandra said it, about demonstrating the pathways. An apprenticeship doesn't stop here. It goes all the way through to degree. In health and social care, there's so many pathways. In engineering, there's so many pathways. In digital and cyber, there's so many pathways. I don't think, and from behind the scenes, we're not very good at explaining the overcomplicated nature of our sector. We just need to showcase it more in the pathways. We call it hiding the wiring. It's very complicated behind the scenes, and I think we get too hung up on that. We need to stop focusing on that and concentrate on promoting the pathways, making the marketing look localised, and really make sure that young people from different communities and local SMEs see themselves in the marketing.
Just want to come in on sort of Alex's point there. When you're out there selling apprenticeships, you need to sell that end goal. What can you be? Not what are you going to do right now, but you know, when you sell a degree, you sell you're going to come out as a graduate. You need to sell that graduate sort of role. What is that role, that end role that you can be? You've got to show them where they can be. You know, as Stephen says, he started off in the post room. You know, would he have ever imagined that by starting off in the post room, he would be head of retail banking? But you've got to sell these aspirations as part of the apprenticeship package. And I feel, and it's interesting when I speak to a lot of employers in certain sectors, they struggle to sort of do that because they're not actually telling people what the end goal potential is. And the fact of the matter is, there is no end goal. You know, the sky is the limit with apprenticeships. And that's what we really need to be telling people. You know, it's not a barrier to entry, it's a door to entry. And actually, it leads to many, many other doors. You know, there's a door, there's a corridor, then there's another door, and more doors. And it's about, you know, opening doors, not closing them.
Yes, I would add there a couple of points. So I think Pathways is a really good example that creates, I think, and one of the reasons I joined, I left school is I had to sort of financially stuff, but I fell into the role I fell into because frankly, there was no other conversation around what the art of the possible was around me. So the more that, and I've reached into places like Tower Hamlets and haven't really got much engagement from young youth. You bring them to the top floor of an office in Canary Wharf and they see the whole of London beneath them. They're up for some work experience. You know, you try and stop them. Pathways, I mean, you and I, Jess, we were in Oldham a while ago, and to Alex's point, there aren't many scale employers there. So the question is, how do you get young people and older people for that matter, reskilled for the needs of the SMEs, who they are the big employer base in that part of the UK. And what I love what's happened there is the FE colleges and the SMEs have got together. They've worked out what skills they need. The FE colleges are putting on courses that meets the needs of those SMEs. They're creating aspiration for young people to get them onto those courses in a really experiential way, great work experience, and they're then turning into some great jobs. The issue there, in some cases, poor quality housing, which stops some great young teachers coming in to really good education places and, you know, potential and purpose and so forth. And the final point I'd say to Kasim's earlier point, I was slightly frustrated when I found where at Aldermore, and Aldermore did some amazing things. I've only been there 4 or 5 months, but the apprenticeship levy wasn't being spent. I refused to lose a penny of that. So, and some of it was being spent on putting more senior people through MBAs, and okay, that's got a role to play. But we have so first of all, I've hired someone whose sole job is now to make sure we spend every single penny of that. And it's going to junior entry people coming in. It's gone to a couple of SMEs nearby to us to help them with their apprenticeship schemes. Yeah, it's going to the people who need it most, and we are supporting our supply chain as part of that. So this is all doable. It just needs a bit of focus.
Thank you so much. The conversation has been so great. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so I'm just going to ask one more question from our Q&A. The question is, many apprenticeships require base qualification, for example, engineering, civil structural building services, need at least a grade 5 GCSE or above in maths, and this is at level 3. Without it, they wouldn't be able to complete the apprenticeship. How do you think that this can be tackled? And I think that's really important, because it goes back to what I think Stephen was saying earlier, especially about those sort of barriers we put in place.
Can I come in really quickly on that one? Because I think there was a chance taken on me. So as I said, I was out of education for a while. I don't know if anybody remember when Learn Direct was almost on every corner at one time. So I remember trying to do my maths and English there. But I think with my apprenticeship, and that's something that I was really surprised that not everybody did. I didn't have to have my English and maths. What they did tell me right at the beginning is that I had to do it while I was doing my apprenticeship. And that by itself took that barrier away, knowing that I'd come from not having that straight from school, because my cohort was quite mixed. So we had people that just left school. We had people that had started A-levels and decided it wasn't for them. And I was the oldest in my cohort. And because they kept that door open, it gave me the chance to be here. It gave me the chance to still take that opportunity. So I think it is possible. I think providers just need to think about how they're delivering it, but it's not impossible to still take people on and just tell them and have that agreement with them, like, yes, you're going to have to do this work for your level 2, your level 3, but at the same time you will need to do that, because it's not impossible, and it's all about building it into the apprenticeship, and not making people feel like, oh well, I can't do that, and it also knocks your confidence, because you're thinking, well, I could have really done that, but because I didn't have this thing, so where do I go now? So I think it's just, that's a barrier by itself that can be taken down, and it's just some investigating, as Kasim said, it's just about working a bit harder at making sure we kind of try to remove as much as we can.
Thank you so much, Cassandra.
Just on that, it goes back to what Stephen says. You take a kid to the top of a building in London and you show them London beneath them. You've got to look for the passion and the energy in those individuals, not look at the grades. You've got to look at what's good about an individual rather than what they haven't got. You've got to look about what they can create, what they're going to give you, and what they're going to give your business. So, there's a lot of value we can learn from people who may not have GCSEs. There's so much you can learn from life experiences. And I think that's what we need to understand as employers. What do we want from that individual? I always when I look at a CV, I never look at a person's grades. They're meaningless to me, because actually we're living in a world which is agile. It's changing daily. Those grades will soon become irrelevant. It's often you see memes when people are saying, I never had to use Pythagoras' theorem in my life. Why, why is that determining my future? So we really need to be, as leaders and as business owners, we need to think, what is that quality we're looking for in our future talent? And I think, for me, it's adaptability, it's integrity, it's those soft skills of who that individual is, and that willingness to progress and succeed is more important than anything else. So
Thank you so much, and thank you so much to all of the panelists. You've been so great. I could listen to you speak all day, because you're experts in your field and you're so passionate, and the work you do is unbelievable. So thank you so much for your time and all the help in the toolkit. And I'm now going to pass over to Julia to wrap up the session for us.
Thank you so much, Jess, and our incredible panel. I completely echo that. I could listen to you all day. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your excellence with us. And also big thanks to you, Jess, for hosting. A couple of things I can say to wrap this up. We're doing an Instagram live just half an hour after now. So if you'd like to come over there and listen to Kasim and Jess carry on the conversation a little bit and fielding some more questions from the audience, please join us. And I just want to take the last minute we have together to give you an opportunity to make sense of what you've heard. So I'd love to invite you. The chat is back open. So if you could write in one thing that you're taking away from this conversation, one thing that you really want to make sure you remember, leave us with that. And sometimes what I like to do is read what other people have said, because it actually gives me a second thing that I really would like to remember and make sure I take back in with my practice. Other than that, it leaves me to encourage you to go and look at the website, download the toolkit, share it, talk to each other. Most of all, talk to each other about it, try new things out, get in touch with us. We're really pleased to hear from you online or wherever you can find us, and just so pleased that you've joined us for your lunch break today. Thank you to our panel for sharing all of their work with us, and we can't wait to speak with you all soon again. Take good care of yourselves and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. Thanks all.